Rain tapped lightly on the windshield of Officer David Coleman's patrol car, parked just off Franklin Street in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. The 42-year-old officer sipped from a lukewarm cup of gas station coffee, tired eyes scanning the near-empty road. It was just past 11 p.m., and he was nearing the end of a long, uneventful shift. A slight drizzle cloaked the city in silver mist, muffling even the usual buzz of traffic. It should have been peaceful, but David felt uneasy. Inside, his dashboard radio hissed with occasional static. He adjusted the volume and stared at the rearview mirror. Something wasn't sitting right. Maybe it was the earlier briefing. A vague bolo, be on the lookout for a black male, average height, late 20s, possibly armed and dangerous. No photo, no name. Still, David's instincts, finally honed over 2 decades, told him something was about to happen. Just as he was preparing to leave, a man appeared in the distance. He wore a navy blue hoodie and carried a black leather satchel. The man walked calmly, almost too calmly, down the sidewalk, occasionally glancing behind him. David leaned forward. The man didn't look threatening, but he fit the vague bolo. Without waiting, David flicked on his headlights and slowly pulled alongside him. "Hey, you, stop right there," he called out, stepping out of the cruiser. The man paused. "Is something wrong, officer?" "ID," David barked. "I'm just walking home. I live 3 blocks away." "Did I ask you that?" "I said ID." Reluctantly, the man reached into his bag and handed over his wallet. David flipped it open, then froze. David stared at the ID as though it had burst into flames. Name, Julian Rhodes. Occupation, Internal Affairs Division, Department of Justice. Rank, Chief Investigator. For a split second, David's hand trembled. The ID was laminated, official, and bore the seal of the United States Department of Justice. "I asked if something was wrong, Officer Coleman," Julian said, his voice calm but edged with something steely. David said nothing. Instead, he stepped back, motioning with his hand. Please get in the car." Julian's eyebrow rose. "Why?" "I just need to. It's for your safety. There's a report, a situation, protocol." The senior officer stared at David for a long beat, then got in silently. Inside the car, tension crackled like live wires. David didn't drive. He sat, knuckles white on the steering wheel. He tried to remember, why was Julian on a bolo list? But the truth stung. He wasn't. There had been no real description, no justification, just suspicion. "You didn't ask anyone before stopping me," Julian said. "You didn't run any checks. You just pulled me over." David opened his mouth, then shut it. He felt exposed. As the car began moving, David's mind raced. He had to salvage this. He couldn't afford an internal affairs complaint. Not now. He'd already been investigated twice in the past 5 years. Once for excessive force during a protest, and once for an illegal search. He glanced sideways at Julian, who now silently typed something on his phone. "Sir, if I may..." Julian cut him off. "Pull into that Chevron station. I'm calling HQ." Panic shot through David like an electric jolt. But then, something strange happened. As they pulled into the gas station, Julian showed him the phone screen. "Recognize this?" It was a still from a CCTV cam. The timestamp was earlier that day. A man, Julian himself, was captured shaking hands with a U.S. senator. "I was undercover today, meeting with someone under surveillance." David blinked. "I wasn't supposed to be in this area. My location was confidential." Which begs a question. Julian leaned closer. "How did you know I'd be here?" David opened his mouth. No sound came, because now things didn't add up. He hadn't known Julian would be here. The bolo had been vague, but now that he thought about it, the bolo wasn't even on a department database. It had come via a text message from a private number, just 5 minutes before he saw Julian. A text he never questioned. He reached into his phone and pulled up the message. Black male, navy hoodie, mid-30s, possible threat, last seen near Franklin. No insignia, no source, no dispatch confirmation. Julian was right. Somebody wanted him pulled over. Julian now seemed less angry and more curious. "You were set up, but not by me." He handed David a card. "Meet me tomorrow. Quietly. I'll explain everything." Then, in a sudden move, Julian slipped out of the car, melting into the crowd at the gas station. Within seconds, he vanished. David sat in silence, sweat trailing down his back. Who had sent the fake bolo? Why target Julian? And more importantly, why use him to do it? He didn't have long to wonder, because as he picked up his radio to call dispatch, it crackled to life on its own. "Unit 27, what's your status? We have an urgent directive. Do not engage with any officer by the name Julian Rhodes. He is compromised. Repeat, he is considered rogue. Approach with extreme caution." David dropped the radio. His heart thudded in his chest. Compromised? The man he just let go? A fake bolo. A real ID. A top-level meeting. And now, he was in the middle of something far bigger than he imagined. David Coleman didn't sleep that night. At 6:17 a.m., he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the business card Julian Rhodes had handed him. The words Department of Justice, Office of Special Investigations were embossed in silver. Below that, a secure phone number and a location, 202 Brookhaven Drive. No visitors without clearance. His police radio was still silent, but his phone, now powered off and with the battery pulled, sat beside his service weapon on the table. He knew surveillance. If Julian was rogue, the order would have come fast, loud, and official, not a garbled afterthought over dispatch. Something stank. At 7:05 a.m., David left through the back alley and ditched his cruiser. He drove his old Toyota Corolla, off-record, untraceable, to the meeting spot. Brookhaven Drive was lined with nondescript federal buildings. Number 202 had no signage, just tinted glass and a single door with a biometric scanner. David hesitated, then knocked. The door buzzed. A tall man with a tablet opened it, scanned his face, then nodded. "Detective Coleman, you're expected." He was led into a sterile conference room. No windows, one table, two chairs, and Julian Rhodes, dressed in a suit this time, holding a tablet. "You made the right choice coming here," Julian said. "Cut the mystery," David replied. "Why did dispatch call you compromised?" Julian slid a file across the table. "Because someone's been trying to erase me." Inside the folder, photos, memos, encrypted emails. A task force, Operation Glassveil, was investigating deep-level corruption within federal and local law enforcement. Not bribes or ticket fixing. Weapons trafficking, false flag arrests, surveillance abuse. Julian had been planted undercover for over a year. He'd cultivated contacts, tracked illegal asset transfers, and the deeper he got, the clearer it became. Certain cops weren't just corrupt. They were assets for a rogue faction inside a private security firm, contracted by the government. The bolo David had received, fabricated by this rogue cell. The goal? Expose Julian and have him arrested or killed by an officer on the ground. David sat back. "You're saying they used me as a weapon?" Julian nodded. "Because you have a record. Enough skeletons that they knew you wouldn't ask questions." David's face hardened. "So what now?" Julian leaned forward. "Now, I need your help. They're watching everyone on the task force. My comms are burned. I need someone who can move in and out unnoticed." "Why me?" "Because you've already been compromised in their eyes. That makes you the perfect ghost." He handed David a burner phone and an encrypted drive. "There's a target drop tonight. A warehouse on Auburn Avenue. They're moving confiscated weapons. Only they're not going into evidence. They're being sold." At 11:30 p.m., David parked 3 blocks from the address. He wore plain clothes and a ball cap. No badge, no gun, just a mic in his lapel, connected to the burner phone Julian had configured. "Warehouse is quiet," he whispered. Julian's voice crackled softly. Cameras showed 2 men inside. One's confirmed ex-military, armed. David made his way to the side entrance, slipped inside. Rows of crates, military-grade weapons, unmarked vans. Then, freeze. A flashlight blinded him. A man in tactical gear stepped forward. David raised his hands. "Easy. I'm just a janitor." Wham! A second man tackled him, then paused. "Wait, that's him." They dragged David to a back room. Inside sat a woman in a black suit, ice-cold eyes. She smiled. "So, Officer Coleman, funny you're here. We were just discussing your termination." She turned her laptop to face him. On the screen, security cam footage of Julian speaking to a known arms dealer. David's heart dropped. "You think you're helping the good guys," the woman said. "But Julian Rhodes hasn't worked for the DOJ in over 6 months. He was disavowed. He went rogue after killing his own partner." David blinked. "No," he said. "That's not what." But the woman cut him off. "You were bait. Now you're leverage." She nodded at one of the guards. "Call it in. Tell command we caught the cop Julian's been using. Let's see if he comes to rescue him." David sat chained to a metal chair, trying to process everything. Was Julian a fraud? Was this the real side? His burner phone buzzed in his pocket, silently. He shifted, careful not to be seen, and glanced at the screen. "They're lying. Do not trust her. Help is coming. Jay." A second later, the power in the warehouse flickered. Then the lights cut out. Screams, gunfire, flashbangs, and a voice in the darkness. "Coleman, down." The warehouse exploded into confusion. David Coleman hit the ground as gunfire echoed. Someone yanked him backward just before a bullet shattered the chair he was tied to. Flashes lit the darkness. Tactical strobes, red laser sights. "Go, go. Package secured." A voice barked over comms. David's arms were freed. A gloved hand pulled him up. "Stay low. We move on 3. He recognized the voice, Julian, but his heart raced. Was he running with the devil or from one? They ducked through the loading bay. Outside, a black SUV screeched to a halt. A woman with an earpiece waved them in. David jumped into the back seat. Julian followed, slamming the door. "Drive." Julian ordered. The vehicle peeled out just as bullets pinged off the trunk. Inside, David turned to him. "What the hell was that?" "They showed me footage. You talking to a dealer." Julian wiped blood from his brow. "I was talking to a dealer. He's my informant. I fed him fake intel to smoke out the leak inside the DOJ. That woman, her name's Elena Vance. She used to run counterintelligence. Now she's flipping government assets for black market trade." David stared. "Then why would she say you killed your partner?" Julian's eyes dropped. "Because that part's true." Silence filled the SUV. Julian finally spoke. "My partner was dirty. I found out too late. He was leaking names to foreign buyers. I tried to bring him in. He drew first." David didn't respond. "Internal Affairs buried it," Julian said. "Labeled it a friendly fire accident to protect the agency. But Vance knew the truth. She used it to discredit me." David exhaled. "So you went rogue?" Julian looked out the window. "No, I went off-grid. There's a difference. I kept digging because I knew someone had to." Their SUV pulled into a dark garage beneath an old government annex building. Inside was a small command post, maps, laptops, photos, evidence. Julian handed David a file. "This is the next drop site. In 2 days, they're moving classified tech. Stuff that doesn't officially exist. If Vance gets it, it'll disappear forever." David flipped through the documents. Names, serial numbers, photos of drones and tactical AI units. "Where's the proof this is real?" he asked. A new voice cut in. "She's got my son." David turned. A man stood at the doorway. Late 50s, nervous eyes, wearing a badge, NSA clearance level 6. "My name's Harris," he said. "I built the encryption tech Vance is trying to sell. When I refused, she had my son taken. Julian's been helping me stay alive." David was reeling. Government tech, rogue agents, blackmail. "I don't know who to believe anymore," he muttered. Julian placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the point. They create so much noise, you can't tell what's real." Suddenly, the lights flickered. then went out. David reached for his phone. "Generator's out," someone whispered. "EMP." Julian drew his weapon. No, someone tripped the breakers manually. Then came the sound, clacking heels. A silhouette appeared in the doorway. Sleek black pantsuit, cold eyes, Elena Vance. "Well," she said, "this got interesting." Julian raised his weapon. "Don't move." But Vance smirked. "Go ahead. Shoot. The moment you do, your friend's kid dies. You think I didn't know about Harris? About this place?" She dropped a flash drive on the table. "It's all there. Everything. Names, deals, money trails. Enough to burn half the alphabet agencies to the ground. But if I don't check in the next hour, that file deletes and Harris's son dies." David lunged toward her, but she calmly raised a small remote. "Backup plan. Touch me, and this entire floor floods with halothane gas." Everyone froze. She turned to David. "You're in this now, officer. You want to be a hero? Pick a side. Because the middle just got eliminated." She turned to walk away, but stopped at the doorway. "One more thing. Julian's not the only one who's been lying to you." She tossed something at David's feet. A badge. He picked it up. It was his own, but with a different ID photo. Different name. His heart thudded. "Where did you get this?" Vance smiled. "Let's just say you were part of this long before your first patrol shift." Then she was gone. David stared at the badge in disbelief. Julian whispered, "You okay?" But David couldn't speak, because the name on the badge wasn't David Coleman. It was Ethan Kessler. David dropped low as the chaos erupted around him. Sparks from a flashbang sizzled across the metal wall. Gunfire echoed through the warehouse like thunder in a cave. The two guards who detained him were already down, one screaming, the other unconscious. A silhouette emerged from the darkness, masked and moving fast. Coleman. David barely had time to recognize the voice before the man pulled bolt cutters from a bag and snapped his handcuffs. "We have 40 seconds. Can you run?" David nodded, heart hammering. "Where's Julian?" The man didn't answer. They sprinted through a side corridor. Bodies lay strewn, some tactical, some guards. Whoever Julian had sent, they weren't local cops. They reached the fire escape. A black SUV idled at the alleyway below. David and the man dove inside. As the SUV sped off, David turned to ask who he was. The man pulled off his mask. "Name's Malik," he said. "I'm ex-CIA. Julian saved my life 3 years ago. That's why I'm here." David sat back, stunned. "Then who was that woman in the suit?" Malik's expression darkened. "Her name is Claire Brogan. She used to be NSA before she disappeared and started running contracts off books. You just walked into her personal playground. Julian was waiting at a safe house on the outskirts of the city. The place was a fortified cabin, surrounded by motion sensors and drones. Inside, maps, surveillance images, and hard drives littered the kitchen table. Julian looked tired, but alive. "You okay?" he asked. David nodded. "Define okay." Malik poured a drink. "Brogan has your image. Your badge. She'll spin this." Julian handed David a folder. "Then we go public first. These are files from our operations. Leaked contracts, illegal detentions, drone strikes on U.S. soil labeled as accidents. She's not just corrupt, she's a war criminal." David flipped through the documents. His hands trembled. "And no agency is willing to take her down?" Julian nodded grimly. "They're scared. She has blackmail on half the brass. That's why we need to expose her, not arrest her." Malik spoke up. "But we got problem. Last night's rescue wasn't clean. She knows you're with us now." David looked at Julian. "What's the next move?" Julian took a breath. "We have to hit one of her data vaults. Tomorrow night. It's in Virginia. Off-grid. Military-grade defenses. But inside, every file she's ever kept. Every name. Every operation." David stared at the floor. This was never supposed to be my life," he said. "I was a cop. A messed up one, sure. But this?" Julian met his gaze. "You can walk. Now, I won't stop you." Malik added, But if you do, someone else takes the fall. Someone else gets disappeared. The room was silent. David stood. Then we finished this. Julian cracked a rare smile. Good, because there's one more thing you need to know. He turned to a screen on the wall. A pause video. Grainy surveillance footage. Julian hit play. David watched as a younger version of himself. Rookie cop. Clean uniform. Shook hands with someone behind a precinct building. A man in a suit. Glasses. Claire Brogan. Why do I remember that? David asked. Julian's eyes narrowed. Because you've been part of her files longer than you think. You weren't random. You were selected. David couldn't sleep. The safe house was quiet, but his mind was screaming. That video, the handshake with Brogan, it had happened. He just didn't understand why. He pulled out the flash drive Julian had given him earlier, the one labeled Opie, Corridor. Inside were redacted files, partial emails, timestamps. One document stood out. Subject to see, recruitment potential, place into local loo. His initials, his precinct. She'd had eyes on him since day one. He slammed the laptop shut. His hands were shaking. Was I ever in control? He muttered to himself. Downstairs, Malik was cleaning weapons. Julian was on a call. David needed air. He stepped out onto the porch. Cold wind, dark trees, a drone buzzed somewhere above, scanning the perimeter. Then headlights. Too far to be a neighbor. Too close to be coincidence. Julian, David shouted. Everyone inside froze. The first shot hit the drone. A sharp pop, then silence. Malik pulled David to cover as Julian grabbed the hard drives. Two SUVs tore down the gravel road, tires spitting dirt. Armed figures jumped out. Black tactical gear, no insignias. Brogan's team. The front door burst open as flashbangs rolled in. Julian activated a failsafe. Blue light flooded the room, and half the electronics fried. They're not getting this data, he shouted. David, coughing from the smoke, saw Malik go down, shoulder hit. He grabbed the nearest weapon and dragged Malik behind the kitchen island. Julian fired a few precise rounds. David back exit. But someone was already there. Claire Brogan. Calm, composed. Her pistol was steady. You've grown, David, she said, but you've made a mess. David froze. Brogan's eyes scanned chaos. This didn't have to go this way. You had a promising future. Even Julian thought so once. Julian raised his weapon. Don't. Brogan smirked. Oh, Julian, still playing the Patriot. Then gunfire. From upstairs. A second group, but not hers. One of Brogan's men screamed. Brogan turned. What the? Suddenly, the entire house lit up with muzzle flashes. Julian shouted, Reinforcements! Go! In the confusion, David tackled Brogan. Her gun slid under the couch. He grabbed it, then paused. She wasn't reaching for it. She was smiling. You still don't get it, do you? She said, breathing hard. You're not outside the game. You were made in it. Julian pulled David off her. Leave her. No, David said. What does that mean? Brogan leaned in, whispering. Ask Julian where you were really recruited. Ask him what happened in 2014. David flinched. He didn't remember 2014. Julian fired a stun round, knocking her out cold. We have to go, Julian barked. They loaded Malik, half-conscious, into the backup van. As they drove away, flames began to consume the safe house behind them. Whatever had been destroyed in the data purge was burning. David sat in the back, clutching Brogan's gun. Julian, he asked quietly, what happened in 2014? Julian didn't answer. The convoy arrived at 2:13 a.m. David, Julian, and Malik, bandaged but ready, watched from a ridge above the forest clearing. Below, nestled behind 3 layers of fencing and motion sensors, sat a plain, concrete structure, the vault. Looks like a power substation, David whispered. Julian nodded. That's the disguise. It's actually a Tier 3 classified data repository. Brogan's digital coffin. Malik handed David a suppressed rifle. 2 minutes after we breach the gate, they'll scramble counter units. We need 6 to find the course server and ghost it. David adjusted his earpiece. And if Brogan's there? Julian glanced at him. Then you finish what she started. The first breach went smoothly. Explosives on the outer gate. Jam communications. EMP grenade to take out surface-level cams. Inside, silence. Then gunfire. 2 of Brogan's private guards emerged near the stairwell. David reacted fast. 2 clean shots. He wasn't a soldier, but instincts had taken over. They pushed deeper. At level 3, Julian found the access panel. We're here. Malik set up the decryption rig. 30 seconds to lift everything. Then we wipe it. David kept watch by the steel door, nerves buzzing. Suddenly, a hiss. Gas vented through the ceiling. Julian cursed. Security lockdown. She knew we'd come. A voice crackled over the intercom. David, still chasing ghosts. Brogan. Her tone was almost amused. This is your last out. Walk away now, and I'll make sure your name disappears from every file. David stared into the nearest camera. You already erased who I was. This is me remembering. They got the files. Every op, every kill order, every blackmail thread. Julian loaded the encrypted drives into a blast-proof case. We go now. But at the exit, Brogan was waiting, flanked by 2 mercs. Julian raised his gun. Don't. Brogan didn't move. I trained you better than this, Julian. David stepped forward. You trained me too, didn't you? Brogan's eyes flickered. No, you trained yourself. I just gave you the pressure. A beat passed. Then a single shot rang out. Brogan's shoulder jerked back. Malik held the smoking pistol. Had to shut her up eventually. Julian grabbed David. We're out of time. 3 days later, the files were leaked to 3 major outlets, encrypted but authenticated. Within hours, major networks were running exposés on Brogan's Black Ops. Senate hearings were announced. Arrest warrants issued. Brogan? Gone. Disappeared before the vault even exploded. David stood by the river in D.C., watching as the city pretended nothing happened. Julian approached. You did it. David shrugged. We started it. Julian handed him a badge. Not a police badge. A plain black one. No name. Just an eagle. David raised an eyebrow. You recruiting me? Julian smiled faintly. Let's just say the world's messier than the Force ever let you see. David pocketed it. Behind them, sirens echoed faintly. If this story moved you, share it. The more eyes on the truth, the harder it is to bury. And if you're drawn to stories that linger, the ones that haunt timelines and twist in the dark, you're exactly where you belong. Hit subscribe.